My daughter-in-law slept with my husband 1 week before we signed the divorce papers. I pretended not to know. Then the lawyer handed me a document stripping away everything I'd built, and I smiled. They thought I'd fall apart, that I'd scream or cry or flip the table, but I didn't. I nodded, said thank you, and signed my name like I didn't already know the truth. Like I hadn't been preparing for that exact moment since the day I found the receipt in his coat pocket from a motel on Route 41. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how this all started, Dan. Why, after 42 years of marriage, I didn't just survive, I won. My name is Lorraine Bennett. I'm 64 years old. I live in Naperville, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, in the same colonial-style house my husband Mark and I bought when our son Daniel was 5. I taught kindergarten for 36 years. I bake from scratch. I fold my towels in thirds. I send thank you cards for everything. But I am not stupid. The day everything began, I was in the kitchen setting out my blue willow china for lunch. I always used that set when someone came over for something serious. Not the paper plates. Not the everyday porcelain. This was the kind of lunch that would need linen, napkins, and a pitcher of fresh lemonade. Anna, my daughter-in-law's older sister, had called me that morning. I hadn't spoken to her in months, maybe more. We'd always been polite at family gatherings, but we weren't close. She was younger than my son, a little reclusive, and from what I understood, estranged from her own mother. Still, she had a gentle way about her. Kind, quiet, careful with her words. That morning, though, she sounded different, like her throat was full of gravel. "Mrs. Bennett," she had said, "could I come by today? Just you and me." Just the sound of her voice made the air in the kitchen feel heavier. "Of course, honey," I replied. "Is everything all right?" A pause. Then, "No. But I think it's time you knew." The words sat with me all morning. I cleaned the baseboards, polished the silver, wiped the fridge handles twice. Not because they were dirty, but because I needed to do something with my hands. By the time she arrived, I'd made grilled chicken salad, fresh biscuits, and that lemon chiffon pie everyone loved at Easter. I was setting out forks when I saw her car pull up. A gray Honda, 5 years past, needing a trade-in. She stepped out slowly, hugging her arms to her chest like she was bracing against more than just the August heat. I opened the door before she could knock. "Come in, sweetheart," I said. She gave a shaky smile and stepped inside. I noticed her mascara was smudged and her hands were trembling as she set her purse on the entryway table. "Thank you," she whispered. I wasn't sure if I should come, but I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I led her into the dining room. She sat down slowly, like her legs weren't fully cooperating. I poured 2 glasses of lemonade and pushed the plate of biscuits toward her. She didn't touch them. "Anna," I said gently, "whatever it is, just tell me." She looked up, her brown eyes full of something I couldn't quite name. Guilt, maybe, or fear, or both. "I'm sorry," she said. "This isn't something I should be the one to tell you. But I can't keep quiet anymore." I nodded once. I already knew this wasn't going to be good. "It's about Rachel," she said. And Mark, my daughter-in-law, and my husband." The words came out in a whisper. "What about them?" "They're having an affair," she said, and then just sat there, like she was waiting for the world to crack open. I didn't flinch. Not even a little. My hands folded calmly in my lap. "Are you sure?" I asked. Anna swallowed. "Yes, I'm sure. I saw them, a few weeks ago, together, in a booth at Donnelly's Cafe. His hand on hers, her head on his shoulder, kissing." Donnelly's. The same place where Mark said he always held his off-site meetings. I looked down at the lemon pie. It looked ridiculous now, like a gift left on a grave. Anna was still talking. "I confronted Rachel. She laughed. Said I was being dramatic. Said it wasn't my business. But it is. It's my family too. And Chi-Chi said awful things about you. Said you were old, weak, that Mark deserved better. That part almost got to me. Almost. Anna's voice cracked. She's been planning this for months. She only married Daniel to get close to your family. The money. The house. She's been pulling Mark in since the day she met him. I stood slowly, walked over to the window. The garden outside was blooming with the lilies I planted last spring. Mark hadn't helped this year. Too busy. Always too busy lately. And you're telling me this? Why? I asked. She stood up behind me. Because it's wrong. And you've done nothing but be good to all of us. You deserve to know what they're doing. And Daniel, he's so in love with her. He has no idea. My fingers rested on the windowsill. Does Rachel know you're here? Anna shook her head. She thinks I'm at work. I turned to her and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile you give when you've already made up your mind. Good, I said. Keep it that way. Anna looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, I want you to pretend this conversation never happened. Can you do that for me? I don't understand. Don't you want to do something? Don't you want to revenge? I said. No, sweetheart. Some games you don't win by swinging the bat. You win by watching quietly while the other team runs the wrong way. She hesitated. And Daniel, I nodded slowly. I'll handle my son when the time comes. But right now, I need them both to believe I'm still in the dark. That I'm still the sweet, naive housewife who doesn't know what's going on under her own roof. Anna sat down again, her eyes wide. You're not what I expected. I never am, I said, and poured myself another glass of lemonade. That night, I made Mark's favorite dinner pot roast with red potatoes and green beans, cooked low and slow, just like he liked it. He walked in at 7:18 p.m., loosened his tie, and kissed my cheek like nothing was different. Smells great, he said, smiling. I smiled back. I thought we could eat together tonight, like old times. He nodded, too distracted by his phone to notice the edge in my voice. We sat. We ate. He talked about his clients. I listened, like none of it was burning me alive. Afterward, he kissed my forehead and went to shower. And I did the dishes like I always did, except this time, I didn't feel like a wife. I felt like a soldier. They thought I'd fall apart. But while they were busy celebrating their affair, I was studying the rules of war. The next morning, I called my own attorney. Not the one Mark and I had used for our will a decade ago. The family friend with the soft hands and the country club voice. No, I needed someone sharper, quieter, someone who didn't flinch when the air turned cold. Her name was Nicole Everett, 40-something, sharp as shattered glass, with a voice like black coffee and a stare that could peel paint. She didn't do weddings, baby adoptions, or fluff. Just one thing, high-conflict divorce. We met at her office in downtown Chicago, up on the 38th floor, where the elevators didn't make small talk and the chairs were harder than truth. She glanced at the envelope of documents I'd brought with me, then up at my face. Tell me everything, she said, and I did. The affair, the motel receipt, the odd gaps in the bank account that I'd chalked up to fees, but now I knew better. The way Mark had stopped saying we when talking about the future. I told her about the lawyer our son Daniel didn't even know his father had hired. About the surprise appointment I'd received via email, no warning. Just a meeting request to divide a life I had built piece by piece with my own two hands. Do you have any idea what he's hiding? Nicole asked. He thinks I don't know about the money, I said. He's stashing it in a second account. It's in his name only. I've seen the statements. Nicole tapped her pen against her notebook. And the affair, I slid over a photo. Blurry, but damning. Mark, Rachel, holding hands in the parking lot behind Donnelly's. Their faces were angled just enough to recognize. Do you want to confront him? No, she looked up. No. I want him to think he's winning. That I've surrendered, that I'm too weak, too old, or too heartbroken to put up a fight. She studied me for a long moment, then leaned back in her chair. I don't usually say this to new clients, she said, but I like you." I smiled. "That's mutual." Over the next 3 weeks, Nicole and I worked in silence. Emails, signatures, document trails. I filed nothing yet, just studied, listened, learned. I watched Rachel at Sunday dinner, still wearing the perfect mask of the doting wife. She brought a homemade dessert pecan pie from a recipe I'd shared with her 5 Thanksgivings ago. I watched her cut Daniel's meat, brush lint off his jacket, and call me Mom with just the right amount of warmth. But her eyes, they never stopped tracking Mark. Mark, who now wore cologne that didn't belong to our home. Mark, who took calls in the garage and deleted his texts like it was muscle memory. He had no idea I already had access to every phone bill, every password, every shred of evidence I needed. And then came the day, the meeting at the attorney's office. Mark had insisted on using his lawyer, some polished man with a too-white smile named Jonathan Pierce. "He'll make this easy," Mark had said. "Smooth, clean, no drama." He thought this would be a cut-and-dry divorce. He thought I'd walk out with the guest room furniture and a sympathy check. I wore a navy dress that day. No jewelry, no makeup beyond mascara and chapstick. Just calm, purposeful. A woman who wasn't afraid of ending things. Rachel showed up, too, of course, said she was there to support Daniel, but clung to Mark's side the whole time like a shadow. She wore a pale pink dress and a fake smile that made my stomach turn. Daniel came late, bless him, clueless, still believing this was a sad but mutual decision, still believing Rachel was devoted to him. He had no idea he was sitting between his mother and his wife, both holding knives behind their backs, one sharpened with secrets, the other dripping with betrayal. Jonathan Pierce started the meeting with the usual pleasantries. He smiled at me like I was a fragile thing he didn't expect to speak much. "I've prepared a document that outlines the division of assets," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "It's quite fair, given Mr. Bennett's contributions to the household income." Fair, that word. I opened the folder. In it, I found a plan that offered me the small condo we'd bought as a rental 20 years ago, a shoebox on the edge of Waukegan, a monthly support payment that wouldn't cover groceries. And, of course, no claim to the main house, the joint investments, or the pension I'd helped build. It was surgical. They'd sliced me out of my own life. I looked up. Mark wouldn't meet my eyes. Rachel was smiling into her lap. Daniel looked at me, confused. "I see," I said, quietly. Pierce leaned forward. "We believe it's in everyone's best interest to move quickly. You've both expressed a desire to settle amicably." "Yes," I said, "amicably." Then I stood. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just placed a single sheet of paper on the table. It was a copy of the prenuptial agreement, one that had been filed quietly in Cook County Court years ago, when my father insisted Mark sign it before marriage. It wasn't a typical prenup. It was airtight, and it included an adultery clause. Mark's eyes finally met mine. He turned pale. Pierce opened his mouth to protest, till I slid the next page forward. Photos, texts, hotel receipts. The ink was still fresh. The betrayal was not. "I'm not accepting this proposal," I said. Jonathan blinked. "Excuse me, I'm keeping the house. The savings, the pension." He violated the agreement, which means, under Illinois law, and according to this clause, I tapped the paragraph with my manicured finger. "He gets nothing," Rachel choked. Daniel stared at the table like it was on fire. And Mark. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, reaching into my bag. "This is a copy of the trust that owns the house. It was set up by my grandfather in 1952. The deed never transferred. So legally, Mark has no ownership of the property, even before the infidelity clause. This house belongs to me, and when I die, it passes to Daniel." Rachel stood up. "This is insane," she hissed. "You can't do this." I turned to her, slowly. I already did. Mark tried to speak. "Lorraine, Wait, no, I said. You waited, you watched, you made your choice. And now I'm making mine. I turned to Daniel last. My sweet boy, I said softly. I'm so sorry you had to learn this here. He looked broken, but in his eyes, I saw something else forming, something sharp. Understanding. After the meeting, Rachel tried to follow me to the elevator. You're going to regret this, she said. You don't know who I am. I pressed the button and smiled. No, sweetheart, you don't know who I am. The doors closed, and I felt lighter than I had in years. She thought I was a relic, a weak old woman too scared to fight back. But I was the storm coming for her pretty little future. After the lawyer's office, Rachel didn't come around for a while. No polite phone calls, no Sunday visits, not even a passive-aggressive text. She went radio silent for almost a week, which, in her world, meant she was busy spinning a new strategy. When someone like her goes quiet, they're not retreating. They're loading another weapon. Daniel called me the next morning. His voice was hoarse. Mom, he said, can we talk? I didn't ask where Rachel was. I already knew. Of course, sweetheart. Come over. When he showed up, he looked like someone had hit him with a car. Not physically, but emotionally. His eyes were hollow, his clothes mismatched. He was still wearing his wedding band, but he kept twisting it around his finger like it burned. I met him at the front door. He hugged me longer than he had in years. Do you want coffee? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, strong. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd eaten pancakes as a child, done homework, cried over rejections, and laughed through Christmas morning hangovers. Now he sat across from me like a man on the edge of a cliff, barely hanging on. I saw her phone, he said finally. I didn't answer. I waited. I wasn't trying to snoop. She left it on the bathroom counter, and something buzzed. I don't even know why I looked, but I did. And I said gently. He stared down at the table. I saw messages, dozens, between her and Dad, going back months. My hands stayed wrapped around my coffee mug. I didn't flinch. I didn't gasp. I had already lived this moment. But for Daniel, it was still new, still raw. They were planning this, he said. Planning to wait until after the divorce was final. She joked about it, she said. She said it would be funny to redecorate the house before your stuff was even gone. He broke then. Cried not with heaving sobs, but quietly. Shoulders shaking, hands pressed to his face. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said. I should have seen it. I should have. I reached across the table and took his hand. This isn't your fault, I said. She played us all. But Dad, he asked, his voice cracking. How could he do this to you? To me? There it was. The real question underneath it all. The betrayal inside the betrayal. Mark hadn't just cheated on me. He had destroyed his son's life in the process. And for what? A thrill, a younger woman. Some fantasy of starting over. I could feel Daniel's heart breaking in front of me. He looked up at me through tears. What do I do now? And so, I told him everything. I told him about Anna's visit, about the motel receipts, about Nicole Everett and the weeks of quiet legal preparation, about the prenup, the trust, the evidence, the plan. Daniel listened in stunned silence. You knew, he said finally. You've known all this time, yes. And you let me believe. I let them believe, I said, my voice sharp, because I needed time. And they needed to feel safe enough to get sloppy. He leaned back in his chair like I'd knocked the wind out of him. Jesus, Mom. I didn't want you caught in the middle. I needed you to find it on your own. Daniel ran his hand over his face. I don't even know who I married. You married the version of her she wanted you to see, I said. Now you're seeing the real one. He was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, she manipulated everything. From the beginning, yes, I said. But it's not too late to take your life back. I told her to leave, he said. She's still got some stuff at the apartment, but I don't want her near me. I don't want her near anything that belongs to this family. I nodded. You did the right thing. He looked down again. There's something else. My stomach tightened. What? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black voice recorder. I confronted Dad. Last night. I stared at the device. He admitted it, Daniel said. The affair. The lies. All of it. I recorded it. I couldn't breathe for a second. Not because I was shocked, but because this was the missing piece. The last nail, he said. Daniel hesitated. He said he thought you'd just let it go. That you were too old to fight. That you wouldn't want the stress. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I guess he forgot who he married. We sat in silence, both of us staring at the recorder like it was radioactive. Then Daniel said, "What do we do now?" Now it was time. 2 days later, Nicole filed the full petition. Not just for divorce restructuring. We weren't settling. We were going to court. And I was bringing evidence. She served Mark through his office. Apparently, he turned gray the moment he saw the envelope. And then came the text. Not from him, from Rachel. It landed at 2:17 a.m. Just one sentence. You'll regret this. I didn't answer. Because the next morning, Anna called. And what she told me changed everything. I'm sorry to bother you again, she said. But there's something you need to know. Something I only just found. What is it? I was helping Rachel clean out a storage unit she used before she moved in with Daniel. She left some stuff behind. And, Lorraine, I found a copy of your grandfather's will. My blood turned cold. Why would she have that? I don't know. But she'd written notes in the margins. Values of the house. Dates of property transfers. In red ink. And there was a list. A timeline. A timeline. For what? For when she planned to seduce Mark. When to initiate the divorce. When you'd be out of the house. I sat down. My legs weren't steady anymore. There's more, Anna said. There was a printed email. From a private investigator. She hired him to dig into your trust documents. Your medical history. Your daily schedule. She stopped. I waited. She also took out a life insurance policy on you. I nearly dropped the phone. What? It's in your name. But the signature looks forged. She listed herself as beneficiary. It was dated 6 months ago. I couldn't speak. I already contacted the insurance company, Anna said. They're investigating it as fraud. I sat in my living room for hours after that, staring out at the maple tree Mark had planted on our 10th anniversary. A tree that had grown so strong even after a lightning storm split one of its limbs. I thought about everything Rachel had done, everything she was still planning. And for the first time, I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt dangerous. She wanted war. Good, because I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for the truth. She thought she was 3 moves ahead. But while she was playing games, I was rewriting the rules. The morning after Anna's call, I woke up before the sun. I hadn't slept much, maybe 3 hours, broken into restless bits, but I wasn't tired. I was clear, cold, focused in a way I hadn't felt in years. I walked through the house barefoot, the hardwood cool under my feet. The place was too quiet. Mark's absence echoed through the halls like a song you used to love that now makes you sick. His toothbrush was still in the bathroom. His flannel jacket still hung on the hook by the door, but he wasn't coming back here. Not ever again. The evidence Anna had found was in a yellow envelope, now sitting on my kitchen table. I'd read through it all the night before, every margin note, every printed email, every forged signature. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was criminal. Nicole had already arranged a meeting with a fraud investigator and a police contact she trusted at the county level. We had enough to open a formal case. But the decision to press charges, real charges, was mine, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to set that fire until the knock at my door. It was Anna. She looked exhausted. Her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept either. "I'm sorry to show up like this," she said, "but there's something else." I stepped aside, let her in, and poured her coffee before she could ask. She pulled a folded paper from her purse. "She left this in my car," Anna said. "I think by mistake." It was a legal draft, a petition for guardianship. Rachel was trying to position herself as a caregiver over me, claiming I was no longer mentally capable of managing my own affairs. I stared at the signature at the bottom. Rachel E. Morbinet. She'd already changed her last name. Anna sat across from me, fidgeting with her ring. "I knew she was dangerous," she said, "but I didn't know she was this calculated." "She's not just after my house," I said quietly. "She's after my life." And she'd almost gotten it. If I hadn't found that motel receipt. If Anna hadn't come forward. If Daniel hadn't checked her phone. If I stood up and walked to the window. The yard outside looked like any other suburban morning. A paper on the driveway, a squirrel on the fence. But everything had changed. "I'm pressing charges," I said. Anna nodded slowly. "I'll testify, whatever you need." "Thank you," I said, turning to her. "I think we both need to tell the truth now, no matter where it leads." At noon, Nicole met me at the county courthouse. We filed a police report. We handed over the forged documents, the emails from the private investigator, and a notarized statement from the insurance company confirming the policy was opened fraudulently under my name. We submitted a copy of the guardianship petition, and we gave them the voice recording of Mark admitting to the affair along with a timeline that placed Rachel's manipulation well within the time frame of fraud. Detective Owens, a gray-haired woman with a no-nonsense expression and a coffee stain on her sleeve, asked one question after reading through the file. "Do you want to bury them?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I do." 3 days later, Mark showed up at my house. He didn't knock. He used his old key. I was in the living room, folding laundry, when I heard the door open. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. I hadn't heard that key turn in weeks. He walked into the house like it still belonged to him. Still wearing his favorite leather jacket. Still holding himself like a man who thought the world owed him. "Lorraine," he said. I didn't answer. He looked around, like he expected things to feel the same. "Where's Daniel?" he asked. "Why?" I said. "Want to know if your backup plan's still intact?" He winced. "It's not what you think." I laughed. It was sharp, humorless. "You have no idea what I think. I came here to talk," he said, "to explain. Explain how you slept with your son's wife." He flinched again. "I know I messed up." "No," I cut him off. "Messing up is forgetting an anniversary. Or burning dinner. What you did, that was a choice. Over and over again." He shifted on his feet. "She told me you were cold. That you didn't love me anymore?" I stared at him like he was made of glass. "You let her convince you of that?" "I was lonely. You were greedy." He didn't answer. I walked to the front door and opened it. "Get out, Mark." I know about the insurance policy," I said. "The fake guardianship petition. The investigator. The photos. All of it. I filed a police report. Rachel is going to be investigated for fraud and conspiracy." He stood there, stunned. "You can either leave now and call your own lawyer," I said, "or you can sit here and wait for a knock at the door." "I didn't know about the policy," he said. "Desperate now. I swear." "Then prove it," I said. "Help us. Turn her in. Show me that you're not as far gone as she is." He looked at me for a long time, and then he walked out. The next day, Daniel came by. He had a paper bag full of takeout and a look in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a teenager, tight-jawed and quiet, like he was trying to hold in a scream. "She moved out," he said. "Finally." "Good," I said. "That's a start." "She took everything, the TV, the dishes, even the damn shower curtain." "She's petty," I said. "That's what people do when they're losing." He sat down, ran a hand through his hair. I went through her laptop before she left. He said, there were emails. To a lawyer. She's trying to sue me for emotional damages. I nearly laughed. On what planet? She said I created a hostile marital environment by spying on her. I stared at him. She left her phone open. You didn't spy. You saw what she let you see. He shook his head. I don't know how I missed this. You didn't want to see it? I said. None of us did. We ate our dinner in silence for a while. Then Daniel said, Mom, what if this isn't over? I looked up. What if she tries something else? She will, I said. She's cornered. That makes people dangerous. But we're not unprepared. He nodded. Then, I'm scared. And that's when I realized something. My son wasn't a boy anymore. But he wasn't a man who'd been prepared for war, either. He'd been raised to be kind, loving, trusting, and now he had to become something harder. I reached across the table and took his hand. She took your heart, Daniel, I said. She broke it. But she didn't take your spine. 2 nights later, Rachel sent her next shot. She posted a video online in some private account only her friends followed. A sob story. Soft music, bad lighting. She called herself a survivor of domestic gaslighting. She claimed Daniel had isolated her, that I'd emotionally abused her, that Mark was the only person who listened. It was theatrical, ugly, and it went viral. Not because it was true, because people love villains pretending to be victims. Within hours, Nicole had a cease and desist sent to her email and her lawyer's office. The post disappeared, but the damage was done. Our neighbors started whispering. People at church looked at me differently. One woman on my street actually brought me a casserole with a note that said, I hope you find peace. I almost threw it in the trash, but instead, I put it in the freezer. Because I knew what was coming, and I was going to need energy for the trial. She took my husband. She tried to take my house. Then she tried to take my mind. That's when I stopped playing fair. They say there's a moment in every war where the line between defense and attack blurs, where survival is no longer enough. That moment came for me 2 days after Rachel's video dropped. It was early evening. I was sitting on my back porch, watching the sky bleed orange over the trees, when a police cruiser pulled into my driveway. For a moment, I froze. Then I stood, smoothed the front of my cardigan, and walked calmly down the steps. A young officer stepped out, face flushed, hat in hand. Mrs. Bennett. Yes. We received a call regarding a wellness check. I raised an eyebrow. From whom? The report was anonymous, but it said you may be experiencing symptoms of mental confusion, possibly dementia. I stared at him. He looked uncomfortable, like he knew exactly what this was and didn't want to be part of it. Do you have any reason to believe you're not safe in your own home? He asked, reading mechanically from a form. Only from people who make up fake reports, I said, voice steady. May I ask if you're currently taking any medication that might impair judgment? I nearly laughed. I take calcium, vitamin D, and ibuprofen when I garden too long. He looked down at his clipboard. Would you mind if we came in? Just to confirm everything is in order? So I let him in, and I walked him through my kitchen, my living room, my study, showed him my tax records, my pill bottles, the 6 rows of alphabetized file folders in my cabinet drawer. I was polite, warm, collected. He left after 15 minutes, red-faced and apologetic, but I already knew who sent him. Rachel wasn't just trying to ruin my name. She was trying to declare me unfit. I called Nicole the second the cruiser pulled out of the driveway. She's building a case for guardianship, I said. Using fabricated mental health concerns, she's not going to get far, Nicole said. But now we file our own countermotion. You want to play the next card? Yes, I said. It's time. That week, Nicole filed a formal petition accusing Rachel of defamation, false medical reporting, and attempted fraud through guardianship manipulation. We attached copies of every piece of documentation: Mark's confession, the life insurance fraud, the timeline Anna found, the emails, the receipts, the forged guardianship papers, and the full legal audit of my trust. Then we filed a temporary restraining order. Rachel was no longer legally permitted within 100 feet of me or the house. I thought that would stop her. I was wrong. Friday morning, the gossip hit peak velocity. I walked into the local market, the one I'd shopped at for 20 years, and 2 different people turned away from me in the aisle. I passed a woman from my book club in produce. She didn't say hello. By the time I reached the dairy section, I felt eyes on my back. That night, someone egged my front yard. The next morning, I found 3 anonymous letters in my mailbox. One said I should let it go before more people get hurt. Another said I was crazy to turn on my own family. The third, just a newspaper clipping about elder mental health. No note, no name. Daniel came over that afternoon. He saw the mess on the lawn and picked up the letters without saying a word. He stood in my living room for a long time, hands clenched into fists. "She's got people helping her," he said. "People I went to school with. People who still think she's some kind of innocent angel." "I know," I said. "But fire burns loudest when it's cornered." He turned to me. "Are you okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be." That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. watching old videos of Daniel as a kid. Birthday parties, soccer games, spelling bees. Mark was in most of them, smiling like the world was whole. It felt like I was watching someone else's life. The next morning, I packed every wedding photo, every anniversary card, every vacation memento into a box and taped it shut. I labeled it with 2 words, past life, and then I got to work. Nicole and I filed for full legal protection of the trust, freezing all assets Rachel might attempt to claim. We set court dates. We requested subpoenas. We made sure the insurance company sent a formal fraud accusation to her new lawyer, and I called a reporter. Not a flashy one, just someone I used to teach back in my kindergarten days. She was now a journalist at the Naperville Sun. I invited her over for coffee, and I told her everything, with documents, with timelines, with photos. She asked why I was going public now. I looked her straight in the eye. Because I raised my son to believe that truth doesn't hide. And because every lie she tells makes me louder. The story ran 2 days later. Front page, local section. Wife of 42 years battles son's estranged wife in court over fraud, betrayal, and property scheme. There was a photo of me older, proud, and clear-eyed. Rachel wasn't named, but everyone knew. That afternoon, her lawyer filed a motion for settlement. They were trying to backpedal, to cut a deal. Nicole brought me the offer that night. Rachel would drop all claims if I agreed not to pursue criminal charges or public action. Mark would surrender his remaining stake in the pension. Rachel would waive her right to spousal support from Daniel. Nicole set the papers in front of me. "Well," she asked. I looked at the signatures. "Not yet," I said. Nicole blinked. "You want to go to court?" "Yes," I said. "I want every person she lied to, manipulated, or fooled to hear this in open court. I want the truth to be louder than the gossip." "Are you sure?" "I am." I signed the rejection and slid it back to her. Let's see what she does when she's under oath. The night before our first court hearing, I got a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Lorraine. It was Mark. "What do you want?" I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry I didn't speak." He sighed. "She's not who I thought she was. I know that now. You knew the minute you slept with her. I was stupid. But I never thought she'd go this far. Stupid is a choice, Mark. And this is what happens when men like you want to be gods and think they won't bleed." There was a long silence. "I want to testify," he said finally. "What?" "I'll testify. In your case, I'll tell them everything. I blinked, stunned. Why? Because I have nothing left to lose. And maybe I can stop her from doing this to someone else. I didn't thank him, but I said, I'll have Nicole call you. And then I hung up. I looked out the window. The sky was dark. But there, in the distance barely visible over the trees, was the first hint of light. She tried to erase me in silence. So I dragged the truth into the light and made her watch it burn. It was strange, sitting in a courtroom knowing I didn't belong to the version of myself that used to be here. I'd been in this same building before jury duty, a parking ticket once in 1992, but this time was different. This time, I wasn't just a spectator. I wasn't the wife or the victim or the footnote. I was the reason we were all in that room, and everyone knew it. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the DuPage County Courthouse, second floor, courtroom C. The walls were beiged, the carpet dull, and the buzz of quiet conversations hummed under the fluorescence like nervous energy waiting to break loose. I wore a navy blazer, pearl earrings, and the same shoes I wore to Daniel's college graduation. Nothing flashy. Just the kind of outfit a woman wears when she wants to be taken seriously. Rachel showed up at 9:47. She wore white. White. As if she was the bride. As if she hadn't burned her vows to ash and then fed them to my husband's ego. Her expression was calm, like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. Chin high, eyes glassy, with just enough shine to read as heartbreak. Mark arrived at 9:58, alone. He didn't look at either of us when he walked in, just found a seat on the back bench and folded his hands like he was preparing to testify at his own funeral. Daniel was already there, sitting beside me, jaw clenched, suit pressed too perfectly for a man who hadn't slept. Nicole leaned in. She's going to try to stall, she whispered. Delay tactics. Victim language. Maybe even tears. Let her, I said. I'm not afraid of her anymore. The judge, a middle-aged woman with steel gray hair and a scar above her eyebrow, called the case to order at 10:03. Bennett versus Moore Bennett, she read. Petitioner alleges fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, defamation, and abuse of guardianship proceedings. Rachel's lawyer stood and introduced them both. Then Nicole rose. We're ready, Your Honor, she said. I looked across the room and met Rachel's eyes. She looked away. The next 2 hours were clinical, legal, controlled. Nicole introduced our evidence in methodical waves. The life insurance policy forged in my name. The guardianship documents unsigned and unsolicited. The printed emails from a private investigator hired by Rachel to examine my assets, health, and daily movements. Then came the voice recording Mark, admitting to the affair, to the secrecy, to the belief that I wouldn't fight back. Rachel sat still as the audio played. She didn't blink, didn't twitch. But I watched her hands. She dug her fingernails into her wrist so hard I saw blood bloom beneath her skin. Then came the timeline Anna had found, complete with red ink scribbles about when I'd lose control of the house. And a note beside a date in March that read simply, begin transition to full control. The courtroom was silent except for the quiet sound of the judge's pen scratching notes. When Nicole rested our case, the judge turned to Rachel's attorney, defense. He stood, fumbled with his paperwork, and began the performance. My client is a young woman navigating a hostile marriage. Nicole stood. Objection. We are not here to relitigate the marriage. Sustained, the judge snapped. Stick to the fraud claims. Rachel's attorney tried again. She believed Mrs. Bennett's mental state had deteriorated. She was concerned we have medical evaluations from 2 independent doctors confirming full mental capacity, Nicole interjected. Filed and time-stamped, Exhibits D and E. The lawyer nodded stiffly, flipping pages. Then Rachel stood. Your Honor, she said, voice trembling with practiced fragility. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was just trying to help. Lorraine, she seemed so lost after the separation. I thought I was doing the right thing. I stood, slowly. The judge looked at me. "May I speak, Your Honor?" Briefly, she said. I turned toward Rachel. "You didn't think I was lost," I said. "You thought I was finished? You thought that if you smiled and called me Mom and kissed my husband behind my back, no one would ever see you for what you are." Rachel's mouth trembled, but she said nothing. "You thought you were rewriting my story," I continued. "But you didn't write me out. You wrote yourself in. And now, here we are." I sat down. The room exhaled. The judge paused for a long time before speaking. "I will issue a ruling on the fraud charges after reviewing final documentation," she said. "But in the meantime, I am granting the emergency protective orders requested. Mrs. Bennett retains all rights to the house, the trust, and her financial assets. Mrs. Moore Bennett is prohibited from contact pending outcome of the full trial." Rachel paled, and just like that, the tide turned. Outside the courtroom, Rachel didn't look at me. Not when she passed me in the hallway. Not when her lawyer put a hand on her back to guide her away. Not when Daniel stepped directly in front of her and said, quietly, "You're not welcome near my mother ever again." Mark followed her out. He didn't say a word either. The next day, a news article ran in the Naperville Sun. "Protective orders granted in Bennett legal case. Courtroom tension rises as fraud case involving prominent local family deepens." There was a photo of me standing outside the courthouse. My head high, my face calm. "Anna called that night. I read the article," she said. "You looked like someone who'd just walked through fire and come out with the match still in her hand." I laughed. It felt good. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." "There's something else," she said. "It's about the will, the original document." "What about it?" I looked closer. "Rachel's copy. It's not just a forgery, it's a revised version, with a new clause." My heart stopped. "What kind of clause?" "One that would have transferred the house to her automatically. Anything happened to you?" My blood ran cold. "She was getting ready for more than just a divorce," Anna whispered. "She was getting ready to erase you entirely." I stood at the window of my kitchen, staring out at the yard, and for the first time in months, I said it out loud. She wanted me dead. Nicole took the new document to the investigator. It was enough to push the fraud case into criminal territory, enough to open a new line of inquiry with the insurance company and the DA's office. But now we had something even stronger. Intent. Rachel hadn't just lied. She had planned. She had forged, stalked, stolen. Built an entire framework of control around the assumption that I'd go quietly into old Ajor, the grave. She didn't expect me to speak. But I wasn't going anywhere. Daniel showed up 3 days later with a box of things. "I found these in her storage unit," he said. "She left the lease unpaid." They called me. Inside the box were old receipts, torn letters, lipstick-stained napkins with phone numbers, 2 burner phones, and a journal. A journal. He handed it to me like it was made of dynamite. "I couldn't read it," he said. "Not yet." So I did. I read every page, every cruel word, every snide joke about my age, my clothing, my voice, every disgusting entry about Mark and how easy it had been to manipulate him. But there was one entry that stood out. "If I can get Lorraine declared unfit by October, we'll move in before the holidays. She won't even be here for Christmas." I set the journal down, closed the box, and looked at Daniel. "She never loved you," I said gently. He nodded. "I know that now." But his eyes were red. I put my hand on his, but I did, and I still do. That night, we sat on the back porch watching the stars come out, not speaking. And for the first time in months, there was peace in the quiet. She built her whole identity on lies. Now the truth was on the record and the walls were starting to close in. The thing about public court cases is that they don't stay in court. Not really. They leak. Into conversations, into group chats, into small-town grocery stores and Sunday pews. People who used to greet me with pursed lips now nodded solemnly. The woman from the book club who'd avoided me in the produce aisle left a bottle of wine and a card on my front steps. The neighbor who'd watched the police do the wellness check 2 weeks ago came over with blueberry muffins and awkwardly asked if I needed help with my fall garden beds. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was close. Rachel, on the other hand, had gone quiet. Completely. No new videos, no blog posts, no veiled sympathy quotes on social media. Her lawyer had probably told her to shut up, or maybe she realized that the more she said, the deeper she sank. But silence can only hold for so long, and when it broke hard. It was a Tuesday morning when Nicole called. "She's countersuing," she said. "She's accusing you of emotional cruelty, harassment. She's claiming you turned Daniel against her, using manipulative, psychological tactics." I let out a low laugh. Projection really is a powerful drug. She's also contesting the protective order. My jaw clenched. She wants to come back to the house. She's claiming the property is rightfully hers through marital connection to Daniel, and that you're preventing her from retrieving personal and sentimental items, such as, Nicole read from the document, heirloom jewelry, family photos, and gifts received during the marriage. She means the Cartier watch Mark gave me, and the pearl necklace I loaned her once for a dinner party. Exactly. And the family photos. Photos of you and Mark in the 80s. She said she grew fond of them and considers them part of her personal, emotional archive. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a long time. "She's not just trying to win," I said. "She's trying to rewrite the entire story." "Let her try," Nicole said. "We're filing a response today." That weekend, I got another envelope in the mail. No return address, no stamp. Just slid through my mail slot like a whisper. Inside, a black and white printout of an email from Rachel to a woman I didn't know. Maybe a friend, maybe a burner account. Subject line, Plan B. "If this doesn't work, I'll take what I can and leave. The house is just walls. What I want is her reputation. She thinks she won because she still has it, but she doesn't. Not after all this. Everyone's watching now. Everyone's judging. Let her have her mansion. I'll make sure no one respects her inside it." I sat still for a long time after I read it, not because I was surprised, but because she said it out loud. She didn't care about the house. She wanted me humiliated. She wanted me erased. And now I knew, with perfect clarity, what I had to do next. Nicole and I filed a motion to subpoena Rachel's digital communication records emails, texts, social posts, deleted accounts. The goal wasn't just to strengthen our fraud and defamation case, it was to show pattern of intent. Not just criminal, but calculated. 2 days later, the DA's office added a charge, attempted identity theft, stemming from the fake insurance policy and forged guardianship request. The moment that charge hit the system, the tide shifted again. Reporters showed up at the courthouse for the next pre-trial conference. I didn't speak to them. I didn't pose. But the photos ran anyway. Former teacher at Center of Inheritance and Fraud Scandal faces daughter-in-law in court. That headline was dramatic. But the article was fair. It told the story as it was. A woman who'd kept quiet, watched, and fought back only when the truth was undeniable. The next day, I got a call. Blocked number, almost let it go to voicemail, but I picked up Mrs. Bennett. It was a woman's voice. "Yes, this is Sandra Hollis. I'm an attorney representing a woman named Elaine Harrow. She saw the news coverage of your case, and she thinks she might have information you need." I frowned. "I don't know the name. You might not. But Rachel Moore Bennett used to go by Rachel Harrow before she married Daniel." I sat up straighter. "Go on. She was married once before, briefly to Elaine's son." I felt my pulse kick up. "What happened?" "She manipulated him, convinced him to move across the country, took out a life insurance policy in his name, and tried to gain access to his family's property through a false power of attorney." I was stunned. Why didn't they press charges? She left before they could build a case. Disappeared. Changed her name. We didn't know where she went until Elaine saw her face in the Sun article. I closed my eyes. Would she testify? She's willing. She kept all the documents. She wants justice. So did I. Daniel was silent when I told him. He sat on my couch, hands folded, staring at nothing. She's done this before, he whispered. I nodded. She used me the same way. She uses everyone the same way, sweetheart. She doesn't want people. She wants access. He stood up, paced the living room. God, how did I not see it? I walked over and put my hands on his shoulders. Because you're good. And she used that against you. He looked at me, eyes wet. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're loyal. And she turned that into a weakness. He nodded slowly. I want to testify. I blinked. What? I want to tell the court everything. About the marriage, the manipulation, the way she twisted things to isolate me from you, from myself. You don't have to do that, I said gently. No, he said. I do. On the day of the testimony, the courthouse felt different. There was no press in the hallway this time. No whispers. Just wait. Mark sat in the gallery again, alone, pale. Rachel's face was unreadable, but I noticed her hands. The polish chipped, the skin picked raw around her cuticles. She was unraveling. Daniel took the stand. Nicole walked him through the story how Rachel had isolated him, lied to him, monitored his calls, twisted his perception. I thought she was the only person who really understood me, he said, but she was controlling everything. My finances, my friendships, my access to family. He paused, and I didn't realize what she was doing to my mother until it was almost too late. His voice cracked, but he didn't cry. He looked directly at Rachel. She tried to destroy the woman who raised me, he said. The woman who taught me to tie my shoes, to speak with respect, to treat people with honesty. I may have let that go for a while, but I've got it back now, and I won't stay silent while someone tries to bury her. Rachel didn't look up. The courtroom was silent. Then the judge nodded. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Afterward, Daniel and I sat outside on the courthouse steps. The air was crisp. A few leaves danced across the concrete like they were celebrating something. Do you think it helped? He asked. Yes, I said. And not just the case. He nodded. I want to change my number. Close the joint accounts. Sell the apartment. Do it, I said. Every trace. He looked at me. You know she's going to fight. She's going to pull every thread she can. She already has, I said, and now she's choking on them. He smiled, just slightly. It wasn't over, not yet, but it was close. And we were winning. She tore our family apart and thought we'd never recover. But sometimes, when you break something open, that's when the light finally gets in. The day the trial resumed, the courtroom was full, not with press, not with neighbors looking to gossip. This wasn't spectacle anymore. It was gravity. It was justice being measured, ounce by ounce, under oath. Rachel sat at the defense table, shoulders hunched, dressed in black this time. No dramatic white, no soft pastels. Just black sharp tight, meant to signal control. It didn't. Her skin looked pale under the courtroom lights. Her hair wasn't curled. Her hands were still, too still, because even snakes freeze before they strike. But I wasn't afraid. I took my seat beside Nicole, straightened my spine, and breathed in the scent of aged wood, old law books, and time itself catching up with someone who thought they could outrun it. The judge called the case forward again. This time, the prosecutor joined us. Because the charges had shifted. The fraud case was no longer civil. It was criminal. The DA presented the new evidence first. Digital correspondence between Rachel and a third-party PI who'd attempted to track my medical history illegally, a quote for black market data access, a second life insurance policy in Mark's name that had been quietly canceled last spring. She'd done this before. We had the testimony from Elaine Harrow, now introduced as a corroborating witness. She told the court, in calm and composed detail, how Rachel had nearly executed the same scheme on her son 10 years ago. Isolation, legal manipulation, sudden access to family property. When she said, "We were lucky we saw the signs early," something in Mark shifted. I watched him sit back in his seat, shoulders sagging, a hand over his mouth. Regret is heavy when it finally arrives. It doesn't knock. It kicks in the door and drags a man into his own memories. Then Rachel took the stand, and everything changed. She wasn't crying. She wasn't trembling. She was flat. "I never intended to harm Mrs. Bennett," she said. Nicole raised an eyebrow. "You forged her signature. You submitted guardianship papers based on fabricated medical concerns." Rachel kept her gaze on the judge. "I thought she needed help. You submitted a fake insurance claim. You attempted to redirect family assets into your name." "That was Mark's idea," she said. Mark's head snapped up. Nicole didn't blink. "So you're saying your father-in-law conspired with you to defraud his wife?" Rachel nodded once. "And your forged signature on the guardianship forms?" "I was under pressure." He said she was slipping, that it was best for everyone. Nicole walked to the edge of the jury box. "And your notes?" she asked, holding up the re-dinked timeline. "Your plan to gain full control by October?" Rachel didn't answer. "Your fake medical statements, your attempt to reprint and alter the original trust documents. All Mark." Rachel licked her lips. "We were trying to protect the family, in our own way." That was her defense. Protection. Nicole turned to the judge. No further questions. Then it was Mark's turn. He took the stand like a man walking toward his own gallows. He confirmed the affair, the manipulation, the guilt, the growing realization that Rachel wasn't just ambitious, she was dangerous. "I was selfish," he said, "but I didn't know how far she was willing to go until it was too late." "And when did you finally understand?" the prosecutor asked. "When she told me Lorraine wouldn't be a problem after the holidays?" A quiet gasp rippled through the courtroom. "What did you think that meant?" "I thought, maybe a nursing home. But now I think she meant something else." "Do you believe Rachel was trying to permanently remove your wife from her home?" Mark looked at me then, and for the first time in this whole ordeal, I saw a man who wasn't defending himself anymore. He was surrendering. "Yes," he said, "I do." The judge ordered a recess after that. I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the cool marble wall. Daniel joined me a minute later. "She's cracking," he said. "She already cracked," I said. "Now she's just pretending the pieces were always meant to be separate." Daniel let out a shaky laugh. "Do you think we'll win?" I looked at him, my son, standing there with dark circles under his eyes but a quiet fire in his chest. "We already did," I said. He nodded. "I just want it to end. It's close." 2 days later, the court reconvened for closing arguments. Nicole was brilliant, sharp, precise. She tried to erase a woman, she said. Not just her home or her bank accounts, but her story, her name, her family. Rachel Moore Bennett orchestrated a campaign of legal manipulation, psychological isolation, and targeted fraud designed to take from Lorraine Bennett everything she had spent a lifetime building. She paused. But what she didn't count on was that Lorraine wasn't just a victim, she was paying attention. And she fought back. With truth, with evidence, with grace. Rachel's lawyer gave a half-hearted defense about complex family dynamics, emotional fragility, and miscommunication. But the room had already decided. The judge returned her decision a week later. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, Daniel on speaker beside me, while Nicole read the ruling aloud. Rachel Moore Bennett is found guilty of fraud, forgery, and attempted identity theft, she said. The court finds sufficient evidence of intent to defame, manipulate, and coerce. I closed my eyes. It was done. Protective orders remain permanent, Nicole continued. She is forbidden from approaching within 1,000 feet of you or Daniel. Her access to any family property is revoked indefinitely, and a formal restitution hearing will be scheduled. I opened my eyes. Daniel was crying. I was not. Because I had already shed every tear. Now I felt something else. Peace. A week later, I returned the guest room to what it used to be, a reading nook, filled with old books and soft lamps. Daniel sold the apartment. Mark moved out of the hotel he'd been living in and left town entirely. I didn't ask where. I didn't care. Anna came over with a potted plant and a smile. "Do you remember?" she said. "How she used to say you were a boring housewife?" I laughed. Now she's barred from every inch of that house. Anna raised her glass of iced tea. "To boring housewives." I clinked mine against hers. "To survivors." That night, I walked through the house slowly, turning off the lights one by one. And when I got to the last room, the dining room, I opened the cabinet and pulled out the good china. The blue and white pattern I'd set when Anna first told me the truth. I set a place for 3. Because next Sunday, Daniel was bringing someone over, Anna. And for the first time in months, I was going to host a dinner, not out of defense, but out of joy. She lost the court case. But the part she never saw coming was who we became when she was gone. I always thought closure would feel loud, like applause in a courtroom, a slamming gavel, a shouted confession. But it didn't. It felt like quiet. It felt like waking up and not reaching for proof anymore, not needing to reread texts, double-check locks, wonder what else was hidden in my own house. It felt like walking into my kitchen and finally hearing the sound of my own breathing again. The trial was over. The headlines faded. The letters stopped. The police reports were filed and closed. But the healing, that was just beginning. Daniel started therapy. He didn't tell me at first. I found out when he left a pamphlet on the backseat of my car after borrowing it one weekend. It was from a place called the Compass Group, a small practice in Wheaton that specialized in post-trauma counseling. When I asked about it, he got quiet. "I need to figure out how to trust again," he said. "Starting with myself." That hit harder than anything else ever could, because it wasn't just Rachel who had broken something. It was Daniel's own faith in his instincts, his belief that being kind was enough, that love would always protect you. She'd shattered that. But piece by piece, he was rebuilding it. He saw Anna once a week now. At first, they called it coffee, then errands, then nothing at all, just presence. It made me smile to watch them, 2 people who had seen too much, carrying each other slowly back into something that looked like warmth. Anna helped me redesign the guest room. We painted it sage green and filled it with second-hand furniture and cut flowers from the backyard. We didn't say why at first, but we both knew. We were turning it into a safe space, a refuge, not just for guests, but for women who needed somewhere to breathe. I used part of the divorce settlement to buy the studio apartment Mark had offered me in the early documents, the one they thought I'd take quietly, like a consolation prize. I turned it into something else entirely. The second room, a transitional haven for women navigating divorce, estrangement, or recovery from domestic betrayal. We kept it simple: a stocked fridge, a clean bed, a place where a woman could close a door and feel safe. No shame, no questions, just space. I took in my first guest in late October. Her name was Leah. She was 38, recently separated, and had been sleeping in her car for 2 weeks while trying to keep her job at a dental clinic. She cried when I handed her the keys. Not because she was sad, because someone finally saw her. That's what Rachel never understood. You can steal a house, or try, but you can't fake a home. You can't fabricate community, or warmth, or a name that people speak with love instead of fear. Mark never came back. After the trial, he signed over the remainder of the pension, dropped his attorney, and moved to Arizona. He sent Daniel a letter, a real one, on paper. It said, I was weak. I let myself be flattered by a lie. I forgot what love looked like. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you don't forget who your mother was before all this, because that's the part of her I never deserved. Daniel burned it in the backyard fire pit, not out of anger, out of release. Rachel, last we heard, took a plea deal on the criminal charges: fraud, forgery, and attempted identity theft. 6 months in a minimum security facility, 5 years probation. She tried to start a blog again from inside. It got flagged for violating her sentencing agreement, and it disappeared, just like she did. And somehow, the world kept turning. Thanksgiving came. Daniel and Anna cooked. I watched from the sidelines, happy to let someone else burn the rolls this year. We used my mother's silver and the blue and white china, the same dishes I'd nearly packed away for good when this all began. We set 3 plates. Anna made pie. Daniel made stuffing. I made peace. At the end of dinner, Anna asked if we could say something, just 1 sentence each, about what we were grateful for. Daniel went first. "I'm thankful," he said, "that sometimes the worst people teach you the most about who you actually are." Anna smiled softly. "I'm thankful for quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself." Then they looked at me. I held my wine glass for a moment, thinking. "I'm thankful," I said, "that when the storm came for me, I didn't just survive it. I built a lighthouse out of it." Later that night, after they'd left, I walked through the house, barefoot, same as I did all those months ago. But this time, I wasn't looking for proof. I wasn't collecting evidence. I was closing windows, tucking in pillows, turning off lamps with a kind of gentle gratitude. I passed the fireplace mantel. Photos lined it now, but different ones. Not the old anniversary shots. Not the posed family portraits with Mark and Rachel. No, these were real. Me and Daniel sitting on the porch, Anna holding a garden hose, laughing mid-spray. Leah, our first guest, posing shyly in front of the second room sign before she left for her new apartment. Proof that the story didn't end where they tried to end it. That it grew. That it bloomed. That we did more than win. We rebuilt. She tried to end my story. Instead, she became a footnote in the first chapter of everything that came after. Spring arrived late that year. The ground thawed in April, 2 weeks behind schedule, as if even the soil was tired from everything we'd lived through. But when it did come, when the frost gave way to green, I felt it everywhere. In my spine, in the kitchen floorboards, in the walls of this house that had survived every lie whispered beneath its roof. And on the first Sunday of May, we opened the garden again. The same garden Mark and I had planted 30 years ago. The one I'd nearly abandoned. The one Rachel had called outdated when she thought she'd be redesigning the yard herself. We pulled the weeds, replanted the tulips, added a new bench, right under the sycamore. And then we filled the backyard with chairs and music and folding tables draped in linen. Because that weekend, we were hosting a wedding. It wasn't a big wedding, nothing fancy. No ballroom, no band, just Daniel and Anna, and the people who mattered most. Old friends, a few co-workers, my sister from Michigan, and 2 women from the second room who brought flowers they'd grown themselves. Daniel wore gray. Anna wore pale blue. They stood beneath the arbor mark, built in '93, the same place Daniel used to run through with water balloons and bruised knees. Anna's hair was pinned back with a small silver comb that once belonged to my mother, and when they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the yard. Daniel said, "You saw me when I couldn't see myself." Anna said, "You taught me that honesty doesn't have to hurt hand. Silence doesn't have to be survival." They kissed. We clapped. And just like that, the past became background noise. Not gone, but over. I gave a speech. Anna asked me to. "Just say whatever you'd want to say to yourself," she said, "if you were the bride today." So I stood, holding a glass of iced tea instead of champagne, because we were all a little older now. And more cautious about heartburn, I said this: I once thought my greatest role was as someone's wife, and for a long time, I was proud of that. But somewhere along the line, I forgot that I was a whole person before anyone ever called me. Mrs. I gave and gave until I forgot where I ended and others began. But betrayal, I continued, has a funny way of showing you the blueprint of your own backbone. I looked at Daniel, at Anna, at the guests, and now I know. I was never just a wife. I was a survivor, a builder, a woman who learned how to protect what mattered quietly, patiently, fiercely. And watching my son and his wife stand here today, not in pretense or manipulation, but in truth, tells me I did something right after all. The applause was soft but real. The kind of clapping that says, "We see you now, and we should have seen you all along." Rachel didn't send a card, didn't attempt contact. She'd been released from her sentence 2 weeks earlier, moved in with a cousin somewhere in Iowa. The last I heard, she'd started a new job under a different name, working reception at a law office. Oh, the irony. Her past would follow her. That much I knew, but I didn't need to, because I had something she never would. Roots, real ones. In June, I opened a second location of the second room. This one in Aurora, near the train station. Bigger room, for 2 women at a time, plus 1 child if needed. A grant came through, courtesy of a local nonprofit that read about us in the paper. The first guest in the new space was a woman named Karina, 41, divorced after 20 years. Her husband drained their retirement behind her back and then left her with an eviction notice and nothing else. She sat on the porch with me the first night and said, "I don't know who I am without him." I smiled and handed her a cup of chamomile tea. "Then, it's time you get to meet yourself," I said. She stared at me for a long moment, then whispered, "Thank you." That summer, Daniel and Anna came by every Sunday for dinner. We didn't call it a tradition, it just became one. Some Sundays it was grilled vegetables and jazz music through the kitchen speakers. Other nights it was pizza and board games and laughter that made the walls hum. They were trying for a baby, quietly. No pressure, just hope. I didn't ask too many questions, but I started knitting again, just in case. In August, I received a package in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside was a photo, an old one. Me and Mark on our honeymoon in Vermont. He was smiling. I was barefoot in the grass, laughing at something just outside the frame. There was no note, just the photo. I sat with it for a while, not angry, not sad, just grateful. That once, for a moment, something had been real, and that now something better was. On the 1-year anniversary of the day Rachel first walked into my kitchen pretending to care, I lit a candle, not in mourning, in memory. I walked through the house, room by room, touching each doorframe, each photo, each corner that had once held silence and now held joy. And then I went out to the garden, sat on the new bench beneath a sycamore, and listened to the world keep turning. There was a breeze, a sound of children playing 2 yards over, a train in the distance. And then my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel, "Dinner's on us tonight. You just bring the stories." I smiled, tucked the phone in my pocket, and stood. My story had survived. And better yet, it had continued.